On the morning of October 18th, 1983, Meadow Ridge Elementary School prepared for what every student believed was just another routine fire drill. Bright autumn sunlight washed over the playground asphalt. Teachers held clipboards, and children moved in loose, excited lines toward their assigned evacuation zones. Nothing about the scene suggested that within the next few minutes, a fault in the school's emergency radio system would expose one of the most carefully hidden Soviet spy networks operating on American soil. The drill began at 10:17 a.m. when the school's aging fire alarm, a rattling metallic buzzer installed sometime in the late 1960 seconds, sounded across the hallways. Students poured out of classrooms, laughing, dragging their feet, doing what children always do when they know nothing is actually on fire. In the main office, however, Principal Donnelly frowned at the control console. The fire alarm had triggered properly, but an unusual red indicator lit up on the adjacent radio repeater panel, a device that connected the school to the county's emergency communications network. The indicator was blinking in a pattern he had never seen before. At the same moment, in a maintenance closet at the far end of the West Wing, a small radio transceiver crackled to life, even though it was supposed to activate only during county-managed drills or real emergencies. Inside the closet was Carl Jennings, the school's part-time custodian and full-time ham radio hobbyist. He had been replacing a flickering light panel and nearly dropped his tools when the unit emitted a burst of static, followed by a faint, rhythmic clicking sound. Not random interference. Patterned, structured, intentional. Jennings adjusted the tuner instinctively, the way he had done hundreds of times on his home equipment. The signal was weak but consistent, almost like someone was using the fire drill as cover to bounce a transmission through the school's repeater node. But that made no sense. The repeater wasn't even designed to send external signals, it only received, and certainly not on the frequency he was hearing now. A narrowband spike at 30.217 MHz, a range used almost exclusively by federal contractors and military research sites. Before he could investigate further, the static shifted into something stranger, a brief, modulated burst, too short for a voice transmission, too structured to be noise. Jennings froze. He had heard that type of burst only once before, years earlier, while experimenting with surplus equipment from a defense auction. At the time, he'd been told the pattern resembled low-power encrypted telemetry, the kind used in intelligence operations. But why would that be coming through an elementary school? Above him, on the rooftop, the old emergency antenna hummed faintly, and although children laughed freely outside, in that cramped closet, Jennings felt the air tighten, as if the room itself understood something was wrong. As the drill ended and students began filing back inside, the radio emitted one final pulse, a clean, crisp signal, a signal not meant for anyone at Meadow Ridge Elementary. But someone out there had activated it on purpose, using the chaos of a fire drill as cover. Jennings stood very still, staring at the device, realizing he had just heard something no one was ever supposed to detect, and something told him this was only the beginning. When the fire drill ended, the building settled back into its usual late-morning rhythm chairs, scraping across floors, hallway chatter, teachers corralling restless students. But for Principal Donnelly, the unease from the blinking repeater panel lingered. After 30 years working in public school administration, he had learned to ignore budget problems and miswired alarms, but not patterns, not anomalies that appeared at the exact second a drill began. He called the district maintenance office, expecting to hear that someone had been testing equipment off-site. No one had. In fact, the technician on the phone insisted Meadow Ridge's repeater unit was outdated, barely functional, and absolutely incapable of emitting outbound signals. That was the moment the first doubt formed. Meanwhile, down the west hallway, Carl Jennings replayed the transmission in his mind. Every sound, every rhythmic beat was burned into memory with the clarity of a man who'd spent years sorting meaningful signals from the noisy chaos of the airwaves. He walked toward the office, intending to speak with Principal Donnelly, but stopped halfway. A man in a tan overcoat lingering near the rear exit. He wasn't a parent. He wasn't staff. His posture was wrong, too still, too fixed on the rooftop antenna line running along the back wall. And when the stranger sensed Carl watching him, he turned away with the smoothness of someone trained to appear unremarkable. Jennings hesitated. A normal person would have ignored it, but the signal he'd heard minutes earlier made ignoring impossible. Inside the office, Donnelly was still staring at the repeater panel when he finally voiced what he had been trying not to believe. "Carl, what you picked up, could it have come from inside the building?" Jennings opened his mouth to answer, but before he could, a sharp pop echoed from the hallway ceiling, a fluorescent ballast burning out, or so it seemed. The lights flickered once, twice, then stabilized, yet the timing was too perfect. The two men exchanged a glance. Neither said it aloud, but both felt the same question tightening their chest. Had someone else heard the misfire too? Donnelly locked the office door. Jennings double-checked the maintenance closet. Everything felt suddenly off balance. Then, something stranger happened. At 11:22 a.m., barely an hour after the fire drill, the repeater panel lit up for a second time. Another pulse, rapid and precise. Only this time, it wasn't accompanied by static. It was accompanied by a faint, almost imperceptible tone. One Jennings recognized instantly. Not a message, a query. Someone, somewhere, was checking if the earlier unauthorized transmission had been received cleanly or intercepted. Jennings felt a chill crawl up his spine, because there was one thing he knew with absolute certainty. No one in the county's emergency network would ever send a signal like that, which meant someone else was using the school's outdated, neglected antenna as a hidden node piggybacking on government infrastructure without anyone noticing, until today. And if the radio misfired during the drill, someone out there now knew it. The second anomalous signal changed everything. Jennings and Principal Donnelly stood frozen beside the repeater panel, listening to the last faint echo of the tone dissipate into silence. There were moments in a man's life, Jennings thought, when he knows with absolute clarity that he has crossed a threshold, when events cease to be routine and begin to slide into something larger, darker, irrevocable. This was one of those moments. Before either man could speak, the office intercom crackled. "Mr. Donnelly," a teacher's voice said, "we have a man asking to pick up a student. He isn't on the contact list. Says it's urgent." Donnelly stiffened. Meadows Ridge Elementary prided itself on rigid safety protocols, and unlisted adults had to go through strict checks before stepping beyond the front office. "Keep him there," he replied. "I'm coming." But Jennings felt something coiled tight inside him. "Ask for his name first," he whispered. A pause. Then the teacher's voice returned, slightly uneasy. "He says his name is Mark Coulson." Jennings froze. There was no reason the name should mean anything. But it did, because during the fire drill, while students had been filing outside, Jennings had seen the visitor log for the day, sitting open on the front counter. He wasn't the type to snoop, but the logbook was impossible to miss. And there, signed at 10:39 a.m., was a name that looked almost identical. Mark Coulson, spelled with a U. Jennings felt his pulse thrum in his ears. A man who shouldn't exist in the school was now inside the school, and the timing lined up to the minute with the first radio misfire. Donnelly, unaware of the detail Jennings was processing, stepped into the hallway. Jennings followed close behind. The front lobby was too calm. The man stood by the reception desk, hands folded, expression neutral. A nondescript grey jacket, work boots, mid-40 seconds, the kind of face that dissolved into crowds, but his eyes cold. Assessing shifted the moment he saw Jennings. Not fear, recognition, and that was wrong. Jennings had never seen him before. "Sir," Donnelly began. The man cut him off, with an apologetic smile. "I'm in a hurry. My niece isn't feeling well. I just need to take her home." Jennings watched how the man positioned himself back, angled toward the hallway security camera, left hand resting near his jacket pocket. A small gesture, subtle but deliberate. Then he noticed something else. A faint smear of white dust on the man's sleeve. The same gypsum dust found in the maintenance crawl space above the west hallway ceiling, where someone would need to go to access the repeater wiring. Jennings stepped forward. Tone steady, but edged. "She doesn't have an uncle listed under either of those names." The man's smile tightened. And in that microsecond, something shifted in his posture. Not an attack, not flight, but calculation, a reassessment of risk. Then the school's fire bell chimed just once, a short, accidental blip caused by the faulty system. But the man reacted too quickly. He flinched, not like someone startled by noise, but like someone waiting for a signal. That was the moment Jennings understood. This stranger wasn't here for a student. He was here to confirm whether the misfired transmission had exposed his hidden access point. And now he knew it had. The moment the stranger flinched at the bell, Jennings saw Principal Donnelly register it too. A tiny flicker of alarm crossed his face, quickly masked, but not quickly enough. The man noticed, and whatever mask he had worn when he entered the school, it vanished. He wasn't pretending anymore. "Sir," Donnelly said carefully, "I'll need to see your identification." A beat of silence. The stranger reached slowly into his jacket, but not the side where an ID wallet should be. Jennings recognized the movement instantly. Law enforcement trained him long ago to see the difference between a gesture meant to reassure and a gesture meant to prepare. Jennings stepped forward. "Stop." Hand visible. The man's eyes flickered with irritation, but his hand paused. Not out of fear, out of recalibration. There were cameras, staff, a controlled environment. Any action he took had consequences he was now weighing in real time. Then a student rounded the corner. A boy, maybe 10, wandering toward the front office with a library slip in hand. Jennings saw the stranger's gaze snap to the child, calculating again. Even the smallest variable now mattered. Before anyone could speak, the fire alarm flickered a second time. Another glitch. A broken hiccup in the system. And in that fractured moment, with everyone instinctively glancing up at the ceiling, the stranger moved. He didn't run. He didn't fight. He pivoted sharply and walked fast toward the side hallway, leading toward the gymnasium. "Hey!" Donnelly shouted. "Sir!" Jennings was already after him. The man pushed through the double doors of the gym corridor, slipping between classes, transitioning back from the fire drill reset. Students drifted around him, the noise blending into a chaotic screen that he used expertly to disappear deeper into the building. Jennings shoved through the doors seconds later, scanning left, then right. The corridor stretched long and echoing, lockers lining the walls, fluorescent lights buzzing overhead. No sign of him. Then Jennings saw something out of place. A maintenance door normally locked was ajar by an inch. He approached it slowly, heart hammering, and pushed it open with his forearm. Inside was the narrow service hallway that ran above the gymnasium's audio booth. Pipes, conduit, the hum of electrical panels, and on the floor, a footprint, fresh, dust matching the smear he saw on the man's sleeve. Then, further ahead, something else, a loose ceiling tile, shifted, pushed upward. Jennings murmured under his breath, "He's going back to the access point." In 34, behind him, Donnelly caught up. "What is happening?" Jennings didn't answer. Not yet, because suddenly he understood the stranger's intent. He wasn't running from the school. He was running back into it, to reach whatever hidden system the broken radio signal had accidentally revealed. And if he got there first, he could destroy evidence, retrieve equipment, or worse, trigger something far beyond a misfired transmission. Jennings stepped beneath the displaced ceiling tile, exhaled once, and prepared to climb. The hunt had turned vertical. Jennings braced his palms against the cold metal frame of the ceiling opening and pulled himself upward. The maintenance crawl space was cramped, half dark, and alive with the hum of electrical cables running beneath plywood planks. Dust drifted with every movement. The air tasted metallic. Somewhere ahead, something thudded softly, too controlled to be an accident. He wasn't alone up here. Below, Principal Donnelly whispered urgently, "Should I call the police?" 9-7 time. Jennings didn't answer. Any sound now risked giving away his exact position. Besides, he wasn't sure they had enough time to wait for anyone else. Whatever the stranger was doing, he was doing it now. Jennings crawled along the narrow planks, careful not to step on exposed drywall. His flashlight stayed off. Light was a beacon. Instead, he let his eyes adjust to the dim glow bleeding up from vents below. Student voices echoed faintly through the ducts, muted and distant. Their normal chatter felt surreal against the tension, tightening the air around him. Then he heard it again, a metallic click, followed by the whisper of something sliding into place. Jennings slowed. His pulse beat hard against the underside of his jaw. He inched forward until he reached a support beam and peeked around it, and froze. Ahead, crouched in the dark, the stranger knelt beside a junction box built into the school's outdated PA system. Except this wasn't a standard panel. Someone had retrofitted it years ago, with equipment Jennings instantly recognized from a previous life. RF modulators, a resonant cavity coil, and a tiny directional antenna threaded into the wiring. A listening device. Not amateur, not improvised. Professionally engineered Cold War-era tradecraft hidden inside a school ceiling. And the stranger wasn't installing it. He was removing it. Jennings shifted slightly, and a beam creaked under his weight. The stranger's head snapped up. For one suspended second, neither man moved. Then, the stranger reached into his coat. Jennings lunged. The crawl space exploded with noise grappling elbows, scraping shoes, wood flexing beneath both their weight. The stranger shoved hard, trying to send Jennings crashing through the ceiling into the gym below. Jennings twisted, grabbing a pipe to steady himself, and slammed his shoulder into the man's ribs. The stranger recovered fast, far too fast for a civilian. He struck Jennings across the temple with something metallic, blurring his vision. Jennings tasted blood. The device the man had been removing clattered dangerously close to the edge of the ceiling gap. Jennings caught the man's wrist mid-strike. "Who sent you?" he hissed. The stranger's expression didn't crack. No fear, no hesitation, only cold, trained calculus. Then he did something Jennings didn't anticipate. He let go. Not of Jennings, of the device. It slipped off the plank, tumbled downward, and shattered on the gym floor below. A sharp, electronic whine echoed through the crawl space. The stranger used the distraction to wrench free and scrambled deeper into the darkness. Jennings wiped the blood from his brow, heart pounding, realizing the implications. The device wasn't just a relic, it was active, and destroying it meant only one thing. There was something much bigger he didn't want anyone to find. Jennings steadied himself and crawled after him. The chase wasn't over. It was just beginning. Jennings dropped out of the crawl space faster than he expected, the metal ladder rattling as he landed hard on the gym floor. The broken device lay scattered around him, thin coils, shattered membrane pieces, and a fragment of antenna glinting under fluorescent lights. It looked like junk now, but Jennings knew better. Whatever intelligence this thing had been feeding was still receiving signals from somewhere else. Devices like this were rarely deployed alone. He stepped toward the debris, and the intercom crackled. Just a soft pulse, a hiccup of static, but it shouldn't have. Not with the PA line severed. Jennings looked up. The gym speakers, those square, beige units, no one had replaced since the 1,960 seconds, were pulsing with faint electrical interference, like something was searching for a signal that no longer existed, a distress ping, a fallback frequency. Jennings didn't know yet, but he did know this. Someone outside the school had just noticed the silence. He grabbed a fragment of the device and moved into the hall. The building should have been empty. Students were outside at the fire drill. Teachers accounted for. Doors locked, but the hallway wasn't empty. Halfway down the corridor stood Lisa Donnelly, the principal's daughter, tall, quiet, a freshman who rarely spoke and often stayed behind with her mother during drills. She wasn't supposed to be inside, and certainly not holding the item she clutched now, a battered short-wave radio receiver. Jennings froze. Lisa froze. For a moment, fog of war swallowed everything. Jennings couldn't tell if she was scared, complicit, or something far more complicated. She finally whispered, "It's been making noises all week." The radio crackled again, a distinct pattern now, 3 pulses, pause, 2 pulses. Jennings recognized it instantly. A callback handshake, a signal used when a device had gone offline and needed confirmation from a handler. Jennings stepped closer. "Where did you get that?" Lisa hesitated, eyes flicking down the hallway as if expecting someone else to appear. "It was in the supply closet," she said, "behind the old projector. I didn't think it mattered, but when the fire drill started, it just woke up." The pattern repeated. 3 pulses, pause. 2 pulses. Someone outside was escalating the signal. Jennings took the radio gently from her hands, but Lisa grabbed his wrist, her grip unexpectedly tight. "You're looking in the wrong place." Jennings stared at her. "Meaning what?" Lisa swallowed hard. "When I was waiting in my mom's office earlier, someone else was here." "Who? Who?" "I don't know," she whispered. "But they went into the boiler room, and they had a key." Jennings felt a cold line run down his spine. The stranger in the ceiling wasn't working alone. The shattered device wasn't the only node. The radio wasn't the only receiver. This wasn't a simple cleanup mission. It was a full extraction. And the second operative, the one Lisa saw, was still inside the school. Somewhere beneath them, in the dark heat of the boiler room, another piece of the network was preparing to disappear. Jennings tightened his grip on the radio. "Get to your mother," he said. "Don't talk to anyone on the way." Then, he headed for the boiler room. Whatever waited for him, there wasn't just another operative. It was the heart of the operation, the part no one was ever meant to find. The staircase to the boiler room was colder than it should have been. The doors at the top of the stairwell shut behind Jennings with a hollow metallic thud, sealing off the muffled sounds of the fire drill outside. Down here, the building felt abandoned quiet in a way that carried intent, like something had cleared the air of anything human. The shortwave radio in his hand pulsed again. 3 pulses. Pause. 2 pulses. But now, an added third sequence. That meant only one thing. The network believed its operative was either compromised or attempting a full shutdown. Jennings descended the last few steps and noticed the boiler room door wide open. It had never been open during his years inspecting the school. Inside, the air hummed, not with machinery, but with a faint electromagnetic whine. Something operating beyond civilian frequencies. Something active. Jennings entered slowly, and there he saw it. Not a man, not a Soviet officer, not the hardened field operative he'd expected, but Principal Margaret Donnelly, her back turned to him, sleeves rolled up, her hands working swiftly over a metal case the size of a typewriter. Coils and resonant membranes spread out like surgical instruments. Jennings froze. He had spoken with her 100 times. Fire drills, student audits, safety procedures. But this was tradecraft. Close the door, Agent Jennings. We're. Her voice was steady, as if she had been expecting him. He didn't move. She tightened a screw on the device. If you don't close it, the children outside will hear the alarm when it activates. He stepped inside fully now, each breath controlled. You've been running this. Margaret exhaled softly. Running? No. Maintaining? Perhaps. The real operator left years ago. Moscow never bothered to reassign the post, but their equipment kept listening, so I kept answering. E.T. jest. Jennings shook his head. You're telling me you volunteered to continue an abandoned Soviet operation? No, she said. She nodded toward a soldier's footlocker pushed against the wall. U.S. Army issue from the 1950 seconds. Jennings flipped it open and found stacks of old intelligence files, World War II field notes, black and white surveillance prints, and a faded officer's ID card. The photo matched her father, Colonel Thomas Donnelly, U.S. Army Signal Corps, stationed in Berlin, 1948. Jennings stared at her. You're telling me your father was recruited? Yes, she answered. He believed sharing information prevented another war. Naive, maybe, but he wasn't a traitor. He thought transparency kept nations honest. He taught me the same, and after he died, Moscow assumed his successor would continue. Jennings felt the weight of the moment press inward. Years of signals, years of background noise dismissed as electrical hums, years of assuming the danger came from outside America's walls, and all along it had been buried inside a school boiler room, beneath fluorescent lights and bulletin boards and children's artwork. Margaret closed the metal case with a decisive click. I never transmitted anything dangerous, she said. Just noise, patterns, enough to keep them believing the post was alive, so they would not replace it with someone far more capable. It was containment, Agent Jennings. My containment. When the pottage, Jennings stepped closer. Then what's that? He pointed to the device she had just finished assembling. She hesitated, then stepped aside. Inside the case was a resonant cavity transmitter, primitive but functional, wired not to record American intelligence, but to broadcast a shutdown code, a message strong enough to reach whatever fractured Soviet network still listened after all these years. You're ending it, Jennings whispered. Margaret nodded. For good. It stood a day. But before Jennings could respond, the radio in his hand pulsed again. Not the 3-2 rhythm. Not the fail-safe pattern. A new signal. Strong, clear, coming from inside the room. Jennings turned slowly. Lisa, the daughter, stood in the doorway. Her face pale, not afraid, determined. She held another device, smaller, more modern. Wrapped in electrical tape, Margaret's voice broke. Lisa, no. Not now. Jennings realized the truth a half-second too late. Margaret hadn't been continuing the operation. She had been protecting her daughter, its real successor. Lisa raised the device. They told me you'd interfere. The radio in Jennings' hand began screaming with feedback. The floor vibrated. Somewhere above them, the fire alarm triggered again. But this time, not for a drill. Jennings lunged. Lisa activated the transmitter, and the entire network, dormant for decades, woke up in a single blinding moment of electromagnetic violence. Fog of war swallowed everything.